In the middle of Ava's promotion dinner, Mom lifted her glass, stared at me, and said, "If I could redo one thing, Olivia, I'd erase you." The table laughed. My chest caved. Mason leaned in. "You're background noise. Be grateful we let you play family." My fork rattled. Am I in the wrong for standing up and saying, "Stop rehearsing my funeral while I'm still alive"? Because in that moment, I felt like a ghost at my own wake, humiliated, disposable, burning from the inside out. If you were me, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. And if this hit a nerve, please like and share. Someone needs to hear it. Should cruelty get a standing ovation just because it's served with cake? I'm Olivia. And before the promotion dinner that broke the internet, my life felt like one long rehearsal for someone else's show. If this were a movie, I'd be the blurred extra crossing the street while Ava steps into frame with perfect lighting and Mason cues a laugh track. That's the hook I wish I'd understood sooner. Invisibility isn't quiet. It screams inside your head until you confuse the screaming with silence. If any of this hits, hit like, drop a comment. Share this with someone who needs words for the ache they can't name, because this is the ache. Growing up, Mom used to call me low maintenance, and for years I thought it was a compliment. Translation: you don't need attention because you won't get any. When Ava won spelling bees, we got cake. When Mason scored a B+ in algebra, we threw a backyard barbecue. When I brought home an art scholarship, Mom squinted at the letter and said, "Sweetie, are you sure this is a real scholarship or one of those participation things?" The paper shook in my hand. I laughed it off. You learn to laugh where it hurts so nobody sees you bleed. Family game nights were Ava's trivia and Mason's comedy hour. I was logistics. The one who bought snacks, set timers, washed bowls. When I tried to tell a story, Mason would clap twice and say, "Background noise, fade out." Everyone laughed. It sounded harmless until it stacked up in my body like a pile of unreturned voicemails. Trauma doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it wears slippers and whispers, "Don't make a fuss." If this were your family, would you walk out or try to be louder? Tell me in the comments seriously. There were shock lines before the big shock. Once after I got promoted at work, I called Mom on my way home. She answered on speaker while driving with Ava. "Mom, I have news," I said, excited. "Mom." "Hold Ava just merged perfectly across 3 lanes." "She's a natural," Ava giggled. "What was your thing, Olivia?" I told them. Silence, then Mom. "Honey, that's cute. But do they pay you like a real job?" That line didn't just bruise, it branded. Not real, not enough, not main character. Later, Mason texted, "We're proud in our own way. Also, can you feed my cat this weekend? I know you don't have plans, playful." Maybe. A prophecy? Definitely. Holidays were stages for small humiliations. Thanksgiving. Ava carved the turkey, Mason led a toast, I carried plates. Mom glanced at my sweater and said, "You always dress like you want to disappear." I smiled and said, "It's comfortable." She replied, "So is a beige wall." People chuckled. In the group chat, they immortalized it as the beige wall era. That's how minor cruelty works. Call it a bit, repeat it until it becomes culture, then accuse you of being humorless when you flinch. "We tease because we love," Mom would say. But love without safety is performance, not love. I tried to set boundaries. I told Mom, "Those jokes sting." She sighed. "You're too sensitive, Olivia." We were all laughing. Ava chimed in. We roast each other equally. Except we didn't. Ava was a goddess, Mason the golden retriever, and I was the practice child. Yes, Mom actually said that once. "You were our practice child. We made mistakes on you so we could get better." It landed like a piano on my chest. I half joked, "Pretty sure pianos aren't safety rated for rib cages." Everyone chuckled, and the moment moved on inside me. It never did. This is the psychological part people miss. You don't crumble because of one sentence. You crumble because every minor quake weakens your beams until a door slam feels like an earthquake. I started narrating my life in second guesses. Before texts, I edited myself. Before family events, I rehearsed ways to be unbothered. I practiced neutrality like it was a religion. I prayed at the altar of not making things worse. But nothing changes when your survival strategy is to take up less space than your own shadow. The month before the dinner, I bought myself a small ring, a cheap little band with a tiny stone. I wanted a reminder. I exist. I wore it on a chain because I was afraid to wear it on my finger. Even my jewelry learned to hide. When Mason saw it, he smirked. Engaged to your imaginary life? It was a line built to detonate. Ava laughed and said, Mason! The kind of correction that doubles as applause. I swallowed a comeback. You can't win when the referee shakes hands with the bully mid-game. I noticed loneliness showing up in practical ways. I ate dinner on the floor by my coffee table because chairs felt like performances too. I listened to podcasts about boundaries in the shower, mouthing lines I never said out loud. My phone became a museum of unsent drafts. That hurt? Please stop. Do you realize? Tiny letters that never made it to the mailbox. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but peace built on self-erasure is hostage negotiation. I'm telling you all this so the dinner makes sense. Because people hear the climax and say, it can't be that bad. It is never about one comment. It's the dripping faucet that floods the house while everyone argues about whether the last drop is wetter than the first. If you've ever felt erased by laughter, put a dot in the comments. If you've whispered, am I in the wrong for wanting the room to stop spinning? Say it out loud here. You are not the punchline. You're the author. I just didn't know that yet. The week of the dinner, Mom asked me to come early and help polish the speech for Ava. I edited jokes, removed a barb about Mason's permanent gap year, smoothed a line teasing Dad's hearing. I asked, could we cut the part about me being late to life? Mom smiled sweetly. But it's so true, Olivia. You're our slow burn child. Slow burn. I pictured a match, the sulfur smile, the flame licking up until someone decides whether to blow it out or watch it eat the stick. Spoiler, they watched. By the time we arrived at the restaurant white tablecloths, the scent of butter and celebration, I had already decided I'd be easy. Smile toast, carry plates, go home. The quiet plan of a quiet girl. And then the microphone found Mom, and Mom found me, and the worst line found its way into the air like a flare everyone pretended was a sparkler. What happened next is the part the internet knows, but before it exploded on cameras and comments, it had been a slow explosion in my chest for years. That's the real prelude. I was already burning. If anything in this story is drawing your breath backward, like a gasp, you forgot to release pause and exhale with me. Then hit, so the algorithm knows we're here. Drop a comment if you've ever been called a joke and took years to realize the joke wasn't funny. Share this if you suspect someone needs permission to name it. This is emotional abuse disguised as family banter. And I promise soon you'll hear exactly how it detonated. Stay. The night of Ava's promotion dinner, the restaurant glowed like a jewelry box. Crystal glasses, velvet hush, waiters floating by with plates that looked like art. I took my small seat near the end of the table. Mom sat center stage, Ava beside her in a dress that said future. Mason loose-limbed and smirking like the joke had arrived early and was saving him a chair. My job unassigned, understood, was to keep the air smooth. If you know that role, tell me. If you're playing it right now in your own life, comment air smoother and I'll see you. The speeches began. Dad went first sweet, stumbling, proud. He called Ava brilliant, Mason fearless, me steady. Steady is what people say when they mean, you never make us nervous because you never make a move. I smiled anyway. Then Mom stood. The room leaned forward. She had printed note cards, of course. The first lines were charming stories about Ava's first science fair, her tenacity, the way she runs toward challenge. People murmured approval. The second card was a family roast. She teased Dad's snore, Mason's messy car, and then her eyes landed on me. I watched her decide something, the way you watch a surgeon lift the wrong tool. She smiled, lifted her glass, and said, clear enough to carry, if I could redo one thing, Olivia, I'd erase you. Silence cracked, then laughter, honest and loud, like someone had just told them a secret they were thrilled to be in on. My chest caved. I didn't hear the rest of the sentence. Mom continued. I think something about the middle kid, the practice run, bless her heart. Mason leaned toward me and whispered, hot with triumph. Told you background noise. Ava put a hand on Mom's arm and laughed the way you do when something is edgy but fun. A waiter refilled my water as if the room hadn't shifted into an earthquake. Shock is physical. The air felt syrupy. My fork clinked against the plate like a bell trying to wake me up. My mind did that split screen thing. One part screaming, another narrating like a documentary. Observe the subject experiencing social death in a white tablecloth habitat. I wanted to disappear, yes, but I also felt ablaze. Every tiny unreturned call inside me rose up in a red wave. You can live through 1,000 small cuts, but when the knife gets a microphone, something primal in you grabs the stage back. I stood. My chair scraped the floor, a sound like a match going off. People turned. Mom blinked, surprised I had legs. I felt my voice before I heard it. Stop rehearsing my funeral while I'm still alive. The room froze. It was the truest sentence I've ever said. Ava's smile hiccuped. Mason rolled his eyes and muttered, "Oh, here we go." Mom didn't miss a beat. She tilted her head and said into the mic, "Yes, into the mic. Sweetheart, you're making this about you." The table laughed again, softer this time, confused. Rage kissed my spine. I kept going. I am about me for once. You called me an eraser. You've called me a beige wall, a practice child. I'm a person. My hands shook. I could hear my heart in my mouth. For the first time, I watched people actually look at me, not over me, not through me, at me. And then Mason, savior of nothing, chimed in, just loud enough, "Take your meds, Liv. This ain't group therapy." The line landed with a slap. A stranger at the next table sucked in a breath. Someone's fork paused midair. That's when the first tear broke out of me, not a sob, a single bright betrayal. I said, "I'm not crazy. I'm tired." Mom sighed, stage trained, and played the crowd. We kid because we love. Olivia has always been a little poetic. The word fell like a cage. Ava stood touching my elbow. "Hey, sit. You're ruining my night." Her voice was soft, her eyes steel. It was a loving strangulation. Something in me snapped a rope worn thin, giving way, with no sound, and then all the sound. "Your night was supposed to celebrate your work," I said, "not my erasure. But apparently my disappearance is the entertainment." I put my napkin on the table like a white flag I refused to wave. "Congratulations, Ava," I added, because the truth didn't require me to be cruel. But I'm done standing still so everyone else can have room to dance. That's when the whispers started other tables, the bar, even a couple at the window. I didn't plan to perform. The performance had been forced on me for years. Still, the words came clean. If you've ever felt your voice return to you mid-sentence, you know it's holy. Was I wrong here? I asked the room, not meaning them exactly, meaning anyone who had ears. Was I wrong to ask for basic respect? To refuse to laugh at being the punchline? To refuse to be erased? A waiter tried to hand me water. I said, "Thank you," because kindness matters even when your life is on fire. Mom's smile cracked. She set the mic down with a little click that sounded like a door locking. "We'll talk about this later," she said. That old promise, the after, the quiet scolding no longer had power. I nodded. "No, we won't. Not like this. Not ever again." I picked up my bag. Mason mouthed, "Drama queen." And softer but full of venom, "You were born wrong." There it was, the shock line to end all shock lines. People who had been chuckling went still. You could feel the temperature drop. I walked out. The night air felt like oxygen for the first time in a long time. My hands were shaking, my ring chain warm against my skin like a small pulse saying, "Still here." Outside, one of the bartenders slipped me a napkin with a scribbled note. "You're not crazy." They were cruel. I kept that napkin. It lives in my wallet like proof. I got in my car and sat a long time, forehead on the steering wheel, letting the terror pass through. Speaking up doesn't make you fearless, it makes you honest. I cried until the crying slowed into a hum, the hum into a breath, the breath into a decision. I was going to stop applying for citizenship in a family that kept deporting me. If you think that's dramatic, try begging for visas to love from people who stamp denied with a smile. If you've ever driven away from a table you used to starve at, tell me. If you're not there yet, I'm holding a seat at mine. And yes, I asked the internet the question, was I wrong here? Not because I needed strangers to bless me, but because sometimes the crowd that harms you is so loud, you need a new crowd to recalibrate your hearing. The comments poured in, the messages, the Me Too's, and I'm so sorry. Cruelty should not get a standing ovation just because it's served with cake. Like this, if you agree, share if someone you love needs a template for a boundary. Comment your own shock line so we can strip it of its power together. And then I started the hard part, changing my life. The morning after, my phone was a war zone text from Mom. Last night was unacceptable. From Ava, we need to talk. From Mason, 3 laughing emojis and a coffin. I muted the thread and poured coffee with hands that weren't quite mine yet. My apartment looked the same, but I didn't. Something had shifted. The tiny hinge inside me that always swung toward appeasement had finally jammed. I decided on 3 steps: space, structure, support. If you're planning your own escape, write those down. Space, create distance. Structure, make a plan. Support, build people. First, space. I wrote a message to the family chat. I'm stepping back. No calls for a while. I'll reach out when I'm ready, Mom replied instantly. Immature. Ava, you're making this bigger than it is. Mason, don't forget to feed my cat and lol. I blocked Mason, archived the thread, and put my phone face down. You don't need permission to make yourself safe. Sometimes the bravest act is to become unreachable to people who only reach for you to pull you back under. Second, structure. I found a therapist the same day. I'd always told myself therapy was for someone else. The someone I didn't think I was allowed to be. Messy, central, worthy of time. My therapist gentle, sharp listened while I told the whole story. When I said, maybe I'm too sensitive, she paused. Let's reframe. You're appropriately sensitive to disrespect. That line rearranged my furniture. She gave me language, emotional abuse, scapegoating, family systems, learned fawning. She gave me homework, write down the shock lines and answer them with truth. You were born wrong, Mason said. My answer, I was born a person. I built practical rituals for the pain. Morning walks without my phone, a sticky note on my mirror. You're allowed to be inconvenient. A rule for social media. Unfollow anyone who laughs at people trying. I moved my sofa to face the window. Tiny rebellions create air. I bought a second ring not to hide, but to wear. When someone noticed, I said, I gave it to myself for surviving. If you're listening to this on a commute, maybe your ritual starts with 3 breaths before you walk into the building. If you're watching at night, maybe it's a glass of water between episodes of self-doubt. Friends stepped in where family stepped out. Dana brought soup and said nothing until I spoke. Eli texted, do you want advice or presents? Presents. He came over and we watched bad TV and let laughter land where it didn't hurt. I told them the worst parts. The lines, the table, the coffin emojis. Dana whispered, I'm so mad I could bite something. That anger felt like a blanket around a shivering kid. Borrow the outrage of people who love you, it keeps you warm while your own builds. I changed my environment too. I applied for a transfer at work and got 1 new team, new building, new badge photo where I actually looked like I was breathing. I took a weekend trip alone to a nearby city. I ate breakfast at the counter, the good kind with swivel stools, and the waitress called me Han and slid me an extra pancake. I cried a little into maple syrup because kindness can feel like whiplash when your nervous system is trained for impact. I tipped big. I walked along the water and said out loud, I am not a beige wall. People glanced, I smiled. Let them. The family didn't give up easy. Mom sent a long email titled, Olivia Perspective, explaining humor, family roles, How I misinterpreted. Ava asked me to coffee, as sisters, then slipped in. Mom's been so stressed, could you apologize for the scene? Apologize for being a person. Old Olivia would have folded like a note passed in class. New Olivia wrote, I will talk when there is ownership of harm. Not before Ava replied, you're making ultimatums. I said, I'm making boundaries. Boundaries sound like threats to people who benefit from your lack of them. Weeks became months. The silence that used to terrify me started to feel like a room I decorated myself. Therapy sessions traced new wiring in my brain. You can want connection without accepting cruelty. You can love people and still stay far away. I blocked Mom's second number. I saved money and moved apartments to a place with more light. I painted one wall a reckless, joyful color. Beige no more. Then something unexpected. Messages from people at the dinner. A server wrote, I saw what happened. It wasn't okay. A cousin I hadn't talked to in years. I used to think I was the only one who felt small around them. The chorus shifted. The crowd in my head stopped booing. Online, my question, was I wrong here? Collected 1 million tiny votes that sounded like a lullaby. No, you're not. You were right to leave social proof isn't therapy, but it's a ladder when your self-respect is in a pit. One day, Dad called from a new number. I answered, braced. He cleared his throat. Liv, he said, I sat in the car after that dinner and felt ashamed. I should have said something. I cried the soft kind. Accountability is oxygen. He didn't justify, he didn't minimize. He asked what I needed. I said, for now, one-on-one. No triangulating, no relaying messages for Mom. He agreed. We had coffee in a quiet diner. He listened. He said, you were never a practice child. The sentence stitched a little piece of me back together. Ava invited me to her birthday. I declined with care. I'm happy you're celebrating. I won't be there. She replied a paragraph about family and forgiveness. I sent 2 lines. Forgiveness is not the same as access. I'm healing. Mason posted a meme about victim culture. I blocked him again because growth can be circular, but boundaries can be straight lines. Here's the part where transformation finds a shape. I stopped waiting for them to love the version of me that made sense to them. I started loving the version of me that loves me back. I learned to cook a dish I used to only eat at holidays. And when I plated it, I lit a candle and played music that makes my heart taller. I laughed out loud at jokes I told myself. I answered my own texts. I wore the 2nd ring daily. I bought a 3rd someday. And then I met someone good. Someone who didn't flinch when I said, I've been erased in rooms that called themselves home. He said, not here. We took it slow because slow isn't always a burn. Sometimes slow is a balm. The first time he came to dinner with a group of my friends, Dana pulled me aside and whispered, look at you. Centered, I stood up a little straighter. Healing doesn't make you invincible. It makes you honest about which arrows you won't stand still for anymore. Do I talk to Mom now? Not yet. Maybe someday if there's real repair. Repair isn't flowers after a fire. It's rebuilding the house with fireproof materials and new exits. It's acknowledging the flames, naming who lit them, learning how to hold a match without pretending it's a candle. Until then, I won't audition for a role that requires me to disappear. If you're still here, thank you. Like this so the story travels. Comment the line you're returning to sender. Share it if someone you love is stuck in the beige. And if you're hearing your own pulse come back in your ears, know this. Leaving isn't the same as hating. Leaving can be a love letter to the you who almost went quiet forever. Was I wrong here? Number, I'm the author now, and so are you. Here's where I land, speaking to you like we're the last 2 people in a quiet diner at closing time. I'm Olivia. I walked out of a table where my name was a joke and my feelings were a prop. I didn't leave because I hate my family. I left because I love the part of me that kept whispering, hey, I'm still here. That whisper turned into a voice, and the voice finally got brave enough to stand up, push the chair back, and say no. What changed? Not them, at least not yet. Me. I stopped arguing with reality. I stopped applying for a role that demanded my disappearance. I started choosing small, boring, beautiful things that reminded me I'm a person. Making breakfast and actually sitting down, wearing the ring I bought myself, answering the text from a friend before the one from guilt. I learned the difference between peace and quiet. Quiet is what you get when you clamp your hand over your mouth. Peace is what you get when you stop being the punchline. Therapy helped. Time helped. Kindness helped, especially the kind I gave myself when I was shaky and dramatic and not at my best. I practiced new lines the way my family practiced old jokes. Lines like, "No" is a complete sentence. I won't explain my pain to people committed to not hearing it. I won't let shame decorate my house. I learned that boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They're doors with locks to keep love safe inside. Do I miss them? Some days. I miss the fantasy version of us more than the real one. I miss what could be, not what was. And that's okay to admit out loud. Grief doesn't mean you made the wrong call. It means something mattered. On the days I miss them most, I call a friend who remembers I exist. Or I take a walk until my face cools down. Or I write a letter I don't send. My nervous system still expects impact sometimes. I tell it, "Thank you for trying to keep me alive. We're safe now." So, the question that started all of this, was I wrong here? Maybe to someone who benefits from the old script, I am. But to the part of me that was drowning in "be grateful" and "it's just a joke," I'm the lifeguard. Here's my truth. Refusing to be erased is not cruelty. Refusing to laugh at your own humiliation is not selfish. Asking for respect is not drama, it's maintenance. If that makes me the villain in someone else's story, fine. I'm the hero in mine. What's the lesson I'm carrying forward? That love without safety is theater. That repair requires accountability, not amnesia. That the smallest daily choices, drink water, take the walk, text the honest friend, build a life sturdy enough to hold you. That you can forgive someone and still keep a healthy distance. That silence is not neutral when it's used to keep you small. If you're listening and your chest feels tight because this is close to home, consider this your sign. You don't have to blow up your life tonight. Start tiny. Name the line that hurts. Practice the no you're afraid of. Give yourself credit for every inch you take back. And if you need a room where you're not the punchline, you've got one here. I'll end with a gentle ask because you might help someone I'll never meet. Drop a comment with the boundary you're building. Like this, if it gave you language for something you couldn't quite name, share it with the person who always tells you you're not crazy. Because you're not. You're awake. And if you want to keep walking this road with me, stick around. We'll keep choosing peace over quiet, one brave, ordinary day at a time. So, was I wrong here? Maybe in their story. Not in mine. Not anymore.